In a bustling city where ambition and politics intertwined, a high-ranking government official named Victor Tran found himself at the center of a shocking incident that would challenge the very foundations of justice. Victor was the Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, known for his assertive approach to reforming outdated systems and advocating for transparency. With his popularity rising, he was often in the public eye, working tirelessly to improve the lives of citizens. Yet, his success attracted both admiration and envy, setting the stage for a twist of fate that would leave the entire nation reeling. One sunny morning, as Victor was preparing for a press conference on an important infrastructure project, he received a call from his office informing him of a significant police operation that had just commenced. Unbeknownst to him, a police task force was executing a high-profile operation targeting a criminal syndicate involved in large-scale corruption. Unfortunately, in a catastrophic mix-up, Victor's name was mistakenly linked to the investigation due to a clerical error that had spiraled out of control. As Victor arrived at the conference hall, he was greeted by an array of reporters eager to hear his insights. He smiled, ready to speak about the project that could transform the city's transport system. But just as he began his presentation, chaos erupted. The doors swung open, and armed police officers stormed into the room, shouting orders to everyone present. "Victor Tran, you are under arrest," one officer bellowed, startling the audience and sending a wave of shock through the crowd. Cameras flashed as Victor stood frozen, disbelief etched on his face. The officers quickly apprehended him, handcuffing his wrists before leading him away, leaving the conference room in turmoil. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines blared across television screens and social media. High-ranking official arrested in corruption scandal. Public opinion turned against Victor almost instantaneously. Many who had once praised him now questioned his integrity. How could someone so prominent be involved in such a nefarious scheme? As he sat in the interrogation room, Victor's mind raced. He couldn't fathom how this was happening. He had devoted his career to fighting corruption, and now he found himself entangled in it. After hours of questioning, his attorney finally arrived. "Victor, we need to figure out what went wrong," she said, her voice low and urgent. "This doesn't make any sense. Your record is spotless. We'll get to the bottom of this." Determined to clear his name, Victor realized he had to confront this injustice head-on. Rather than cower in despair, he made a conscious choice to turn the situation into an opportunity for reform. The police had erred, but their mistakes highlighted serious flaws within the justice system itself. Flaws he had long wished to address. The next day, as the story continued to dominate the news cycle, Victor released a statement from his lawyer. "I am innocent of these allegations. I have dedicated my life to public service and combating corruption. This arrest is a grave mistake that I intend to correct." Instead of merely defending himself, Victor decided to leverage his position and influence to advocate for systemic change. He called for an independent investigation into the police department's procedures, demanding that the oversight of arrests and detentions be scrutinized to prevent future errors. He understood that if he could expose the weaknesses within the system, it could lead to lasting reform. As days turned into weeks, Victor's determination to fight back only strengthened. He garnered public support through social media, sharing his story and encouraging citizens to demand accountability from their leaders. "If this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone," he posted in a heartfelt message. "We must ensure that our justice system protects the innocent and holds the guilty accountable." Victor's statements resonated deeply with the public. People began rallying around him, and grassroots movements formed to support his cause. His popularity surged once again, transforming him from a disgraced official to a symbol of resilience against an unjust system. He spoke at rallies, urging citizens to engage in discussions about justice reform. "We cannot allow fear to silence us. We must advocate for transparency and accountability at every level of government," he proclaimed. Meanwhile, the police department was facing immense pressure to rectify their blunders. Internal investigations began to reveal the extent of mistakes made during the arrest operation. The miscommunication had been exacerbated by an outdated information sharing system, one that Victor had previously sought to modernize during his tenure. As evidence of the police's negligence mounted, Victor's legal team worked diligently to build a case for defamation against the police department. They filed a lawsuit demanding not only his exoneration, but also comprehensive reforms aimed at improving procedures surrounding arrests and investigations. The case gained traction, drawing attention from civil rights organizations and legal experts who recognized the potential for significant systemic change. Amidst the media frenzy, Victor received an unexpected visit from the police chief, an imposing figure known for his traditionalist views. The chief extended an olive branch, acknowledging the chaos caused by the arrest. "Victor, I understand this has been a difficult time for you. We need to work together to fix this," he said, his tone softer than expected. This meeting marked a turning point. Victor realized that to foster real change, he needed to collaborate with those who held power within the very system he aimed to reform. He proposed a joint task force consisting of police officials, community leaders, and legal experts, designed to review arrest protocols and improve oversight. The chief agreed, and together they organized a series of workshops aimed at fostering better communication and collaboration between law enforcement and the community. They invited citizens to share their experiences and concerns, creating a platform for dialogue that had long been missing. As the task force began to take shape, Victor continued to advocate for reform through his platform. He spoke at universities and community centers, emphasizing the importance of community involvement in shaping the justice system. "We must hold our leaders accountable, and we must ensure that our justice system serves all of us fairly," he asserted, inspiring a new generation of activists to engage in the political process. The lawsuit continued to progress, drawing media attention and public support. Victor became a symbol of hope for those who had faced injustices and a rallying point for activists demanding reform. The case caught the attention of national news outlets, turning Victor into a household name. With each passing day, he felt more empowered, using his experience to advocate for a cause greater than himself. As the trial date approached, Victor prepared for what would be a pivotal moment in his fight for justice. He knew the stakes were high, not just for him, but for countless others who had suffered from the same systemic failures. The courtroom was packed with supporters, and as he took the stand, he felt the weight of their hopes resting on his shoulders. "Your Honor, I stand before you not just as a victim of a grave error, but as a representative of all those who have faced injustice at the hands of a flawed system." He began, his voice steady. He recounted the events that led to his wrongful arrest and the impact it had on his life and career. "This is about more than just my case. It's about creating a system that protects the innocent and ensures accountability." The trial unfolded over several weeks, with testimonies from law enforcement officials and community members highlighting the systemic issues that had led to Victor's wrongful arrest. As evidence mounted, it became increasingly clear that Victor was not only a victim, but also a catalyst for necessary change. In a climactic moment, Victor's attorney presented a compelling argument, outlining the need for comprehensive reforms within the police department and the legal system. "This case is not just about justice for Victor Tran. It is a call to action for all of us," she declared passionately. As the jury deliberated, Victor waited anxiously, surrounded by supporters who had rallied around his cause. They had become a community united by a shared goal, reforming the justice system to ensure that such mistakes would not happen again. Finally, after days of anticipation, the jury returned with a verdict. "We find in favor of Victor Tran," the foreperson announced. The courtroom erupted in cheers and applause. Victor felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had not only regained his reputation, but had also sparked a movement for justice reform. In the aftermath of the trial, Victor used his newfound platform to advocate for change on a larger scale. He worked closely with lawmakers to draft and propose legislation aimed at reforming police practices, increasing transparency, and establishing oversight committees to prevent future abuses of power. His experience had transformed him from a government official into a tireless advocate for justice. As he traveled across the country, speaking at conferences and community gatherings, Victor shared his story and the lessons learned from his ordeal. He encouraged citizens to remain vigilant and to demand accountability from their leaders. Change is possible when we come together and refuse to accept the status quo, he urged, igniting passion and determination in those who heard him. Years passed, and Victor's efforts began to bear fruit. The reforms he championed led to significant changes within the justice system. New policies were implemented, focusing on community engagement, transparency, and accountability. The police department adopted updated protocols for arrests and investigations, significantly reducing instances of wrongful detentions. Victor's journey had transformed not only his life, but also the lives of countless others. He became a beacon of hope, inspiring a generation of leaders to rise up and demand change. He understood that the fight for justice was ongoing, but he was committed to ensuring that the lessons learned from his experience would not be forgotten. As he stood on a stage at a national conference dedicated to criminal justice reform, Victor reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The applause from the audience resonated in his ears, and he felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had turned a nightmare into a movement, and through perseverance and courage, he had helped pave the way for a more just society. As Victor stepped off the stage, the applause still echoing in his ears, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The conference was a gathering of minds committed to reform, and he knew that the discussions that would unfold in the following days would play a critical role in shaping the future of the justice system. The energy in the room was palpable as activists, policymakers, and community leaders exchanged ideas and strategies for creating systemic change. Victor joined a panel of experts discussing the importance of community oversight in policing. As he listened to various perspectives, he felt a sense of urgency. We must ensure that communities have a voice in how policing is conducted, he interjected during the discussion. Transparency and accountability should not just be buzzwords. They must be foundational principles of law enforcement. His words resonated with the audience, sparking further conversation about the need for citizen review boards and independent investigations into police misconduct. Victor's experience provided him with unique insights, and he felt compelled to share the stories of those who had suffered from wrongful arrests and systemic failures. We cannot forget the human cost of these failures, he insisted, recalling his own harrowing ordeal. Every statistic represents a person, a family, a life affected by injustice. As the conference concluded, Victor found himself engaged in deep conversations with fellow advocates who shared his passion for reform. They discussed the potential for collaborative initiatives that could unite various organizations and grassroots movements. Victor was particularly excited about the prospect of launching a national campaign focused on educating citizens about their rights and the mechanisms available for holding law enforcement accountable. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Victor spearheaded the campaign, utilizing social media, town hall meetings, and community workshops to spread awareness. He collaborated with legal experts to develop resources that would empower citizens to navigate the legal system effectively. Knowledge is power, he often reminded his supporters. When people understand their rights, they can demand the change they want to see. The campaign gained momentum, attracting attention from national media and advocacy groups. Victor became a sought-after speaker, invited to share his message on platforms ranging from local radio shows to national news outlets. Each appearance further solidified his role as a leading voice in the movement for justice reform. He spoke passionately about the need for systemic change, urging citizens to join him in advocating for policies that would protect the innocent and hold the guilty accountable. Amidst the campaign, Victor also received unexpected support from influential figures who had previously been hesitant to engage in discussions about police reform. Some former allies from his time in the government reached out, eager to collaborate on initiatives that would address the systemic issues he had highlighted. Victor welcomed their involvement, understanding that meaningful change required a coalition of diverse voices. As the campaign progressed, Victor organized a landmark event, the National Day of Justice, aimed at uniting communities across the country to stand together for reform. He envisioned a day filled with rallies, educational workshops, and discussions that would amplify the voices of those affected by injustice. The event would serve as a powerful reminder that the fight for justice was not just an individual struggle, but a collective effort. In the weeks leading up to the event, Victor's team worked tirelessly to secure partnerships with various organizations, ensuring that the National Day of Justice would reach communities both large and small. He was determined to make the event inclusive, inviting everyone from activists and legal experts to families who had been impacted by the system. "This day is for everyone," he stated in a press release. "We are all in this together, and together we can make our voices heard." On the day of the event, cities across the nation buzzed with energy. Victor stood at the forefront of a massive gathering in the capital, where thousands had come to rally for justice reform. The atmosphere was electric, filled with chants, songs, and passionate speeches from leaders who shared their experiences and called for change. Victor took the stage, his heart racing as he looked out over the crowd. "Today, we stand together as a united front against injustice," he began, his voice ringing clear. "We have faced challenges, but we have also seen the strength of our community. We are here to demand accountability, transparency, and a justice system that serves all of us." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Victor could feel the energy surging through the audience, a palpable determination to fight for a better future. As he spoke about the stories of those wrongfully accused and the families impacted by police misconduct, he saw tears and expressions of solidarity among the crowd. As the event unfolded, workshops began to take shape, led by experts who offered insights into legal rights and community organizing. Attendees participated eagerly, asking questions and sharing their own experiences. Victor moved through the crowd, engaging with individuals and listening to their stories. Each encounter fueled his conviction that change was possible and that their collective voices would not go unheard. Later in the day, Victor took part in a panel discussion featuring activists, legal scholars, and community leaders. The dialogue focused on actionable steps for reforming the justice system, with each participant sharing their vision for the future. "We must create a framework that allows for community oversight and accountability," one panelist urged, drawing applause from the audience. Victor nodded in agreement, feeling a sense of urgency. If we are to build a just society, we need to ensure that every citizen has a seat at the table. We need to advocate for policies that prioritize community input and promote trust between law enforcement and the people they serve. As the National Day of Justice came to a close, the atmosphere was one of hope and determination. Victor realized that they had only scratched the surface of what was possible. The momentum generated by the event would serve as a launching pad for future initiatives aimed at transforming the justice system. In the weeks that followed, Victor's organization continued to push for legislative changes, working closely with lawmakers to draft bills that address the issues raised during the National Day of Justice. He held meetings with various stakeholders, including community leaders, police officials, and legal experts, fostering collaboration to develop comprehensive reforms. Through his relentless efforts, Victor was able to secure a hearing in the national legislature to discuss police reform. It was a significant step forward, and he felt a surge of determination as he prepared to testify before lawmakers. He knew that this was an opportunity to bring attention to the systemic failures that had affected so many lives. On the day of the hearing, Victor arrived early, reviewing his notes and reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. As he took his seat, he felt a sense of responsibility wash over him. He was no longer just an individual seeking justice for himself. He was a voice for countless others who had faced similar injustices. When it was his turn to speak, Victor rose and addressed the committee with passion. "I stand here today not just for myself, but for every person who has been wrongfully accused, for every family torn apart by a flawed system," he declared. "It is time for us to take action, to implement reforms that will ensure accountability and protect the rights of all citizens." The committee listened intently as Victor outlined the key reforms needed to prevent future injustices. He spoke about the importance of training law enforcement officers in community engagement, the necessity of independent investigations into misconduct, and the establishment of clear protocols for handling arrests. With each point, he could see nods of agreement among the lawmakers, and he felt a surge of hope. As the hearing concluded, Victor left the chamber with a sense of accomplishment. He had planted the seeds for change, and he was determined to see them grow. The discussions ignited a renewed sense of urgency within the legislative body, and Victor knew that the momentum was on his side. In the months that followed, Victor continued to advocate for justice reform, participating in discussions at both the local and national levels. His efforts began to bear fruit as some of the proposed reforms gained traction, garnering support from a diverse coalition of lawmakers and community activists. As he worked tirelessly to push for change, Victor never lost sight of the individuals who had inspired him along the way. He frequently met with families impacted by the justice system, listening to their stories and offering support. He knew that their experiences were vital in shaping the narrative around reform and ensuring that their voices were heard in the process. One evening, as Victor prepared for another community meeting, he reflected on how far he had come. The journey had been fraught with challenges, but he remained steadfast in his commitment to creating a more just society. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the support he had received and the friendships he had forged through this fight. At the meeting, Victor spoke passionately about the importance of collective action. "We are the change makers," he reminded the audience. "Together, we have the power to reshape our justice system and ensure that it serves all people fairly. But we must continue to stand united and advocate for the reforms that are necessary." The room buzzed with energy as community members shared their thoughts and ideas. They discussed strategies for increasing voter engagement, building alliances with other organizations, and continuing the push for legislative change. Victor was heartened by the enthusiasm and dedication of those around him. As the campaign for justice reform gained momentum, Victor's work began to resonate beyond the city limits. Other communities across the nation reached out, inspired by his efforts. They sought guidance on launching their own initiatives, creating a network of activists dedicated to advocating for systemic change. Victor embraced this opportunity, offering support and resources to help others in their fights for justice. He understood that the movement was not just about one person's journey, but about creating a nationwide coalition of voices advocating for accountability and transparency. One day, as he prepared to speak at a conference organized by one of these newly formed coalitions, Victor felt a sense of purpose. The event would showcase the collective efforts of individuals and organizations dedicated to justice reform, and he was excited to share the stage with others who shared his vision. As he addressed the audience, Victor emphasized the importance of unity in the fight for justice. "This is not just about policies. It's about people," he stated passionately. "We must remember the faces behind the statistics, the families impacted by the system. When we stand together, we can amplify their voices and create real change." The conference was a resounding success, with attendees leaving inspired to take action in their own communities. Victor felt invigorated by the energy in the room, knowing that the movement was growing stronger with each passing day. In the following months, Victor continued to build momentum, organizing a series of town hall meetings to engage with citizens directly. He encouraged open discussions about their experiences with law enforcement and solicited their input on proposed reforms. "Your voices matter," he told attendees. "We need to hear from you to shape policies that reflect our community's needs." These meetings became a vital platform for dialogue, allowing citizens to share their stories and advocate for change. Victor listened intently, taking notes and integrating their feedback into his reform proposals. He understood that meaningful change required the involvement and support of the community. As the movement gained national attention, Victor was invited to testify before a congressional committee considering comprehensive police reform legislation. It was a pivotal moment, and he knew that the stakes were high. With his experience and the stories of countless others behind him, he was determined to make an impact. On the day of the testimony, Victor arrived at the Capitol with a mix of nerves and anticipation. He was greeted by lawmakers and activists, all gathered to witness the critical discussions surrounding justice reform. As he took his place before the committee, he felt a profound sense of responsibility. "Thank you for allowing me to speak today," he began, looking each committee member in the eye. "I stand here representing not just my experience, but the experiences of many who have been affected by a flawed justice system. We have a chance to enact real change, and it starts with acknowledging the failures of the past." Victor passionately outlined the need for systemic reforms, emphasizing the importance of community involvement and accountability. He spoke about the individuals who had inspired him, sharing their stories as powerful testaments to the urgency of the issue. The committee members listened intently, clearly moved by his testimony. As he concluded, Victor felt a surge of hope. He knew that change was within reach, and that the collective efforts of so many individuals could reshape the future of the justice system. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but he remained committed to fighting for a just society where all individuals were treated fairly. In the aftermath of the hearing, Victor continued to advocate for reform, collaborating with lawmakers to draft legislation that would address the systemic issues he had highlighted. His determination was unwavering, fueled by the support of the community and the desire for a justice system that truly served everyone. As he prepared for the next phase of the movement, Victor reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had faced adversity, but he had also discovered the strength of unity and the power of advocacy. With each step forward, he remained focused on the goal of justice and accountability. Knowing that the fight was far from over, the movement continued to gain traction, with more individuals stepping forward to share their stories and join the cause. Victor understood that they were building a powerful coalition, one that could affect real change within the justice system. As they prepared for the next wave of initiatives, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Ready to embrace the challenges that lay ahead, as Victor continued to engage with communities across the nation, he recognized that storytelling was a powerful tool in their fight for justice. He began organizing storytelling workshops, inviting individuals to share their experiences with the justice system in a safe and supportive environment. These workshops became a platform for healing, allowing participants to connect with one another and understand the collective impact of their struggles. During one workshop, a young woman named Maria spoke about her brother, who had been wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. Tears filled her eyes as she recounted the day their lives changed forever. "He was in the wrong place at the wrong time," she said, her voice trembling. "The police didn't listen to our side of the story. They just assumed he was guilty." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Victor felt a deep sense of empathy for Maria and her family. He knew that stories like hers were the fuel needed to drive their movement forward. "Thank you for sharing that, Maria," he said gently. "Your brother's story matters. Together, we can ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone else." Encouraged by the response, Maria continued to share how the experience had affected her family. "It's been a nightmare. We lost our home, our savings, everything trying to fight for his freedom. But we can't give up," she stated, her resolve shining through her tears. "I want to help others who are going through the same thing." Victor watched as others began to share their own experiences, creating a tapestry of stories that highlighted the systemic issues plaguing the justice system. He realized that these narratives were not just personal. They were part of a larger movement that demanded change. By amplifying their voices, they could raise awareness and inspire action. As the workshops grew in popularity, Victor decided to compile these stories into a book, hoping to create a resource that could educate others about the injustices within the system. He envisioned a collection that showcased the resilience of those who had faced adversity and illustrated the urgent need for reform. The process of gathering stories was cathartic for many participants, and Victor facilitated discussions about how their experiences could be woven into a larger narrative of hope and change. He encouraged each storyteller to express their truth and emphasized that their voices were crucial in shaping the future of the justice movement. In addition to the workshops, Victor also focused on building partnerships with local organizations that supported individuals navigating the justice system. He understood that access to legal resources and support networks was essential for those facing challenges similar to Maria's brother. Collaborating with lawyers and advocates, he aimed to create a comprehensive resource guide that would connect people with the help they needed. As the months passed, the momentum of their movement only grew. Victor organized a series of community forums, inviting legal experts to discuss topics such as wrongful convictions, police accountability, and the importance of public oversight in law enforcement. The forums serve as a platform for education, empowering community members to engage in meaningful discussions about their rights and the changes they wanted to see. One evening, at a community forum focused on police accountability, Victor noticed a significant turnout. The room was filled with concerned citizens eager to learn and engage in dialogue. As he opened the floor for questions, a middle-aged man stood up, his voice shaky but filled with passion. "I want to know what we can do to hold our police accountable when they abuse their power," he asked, his eyes scanning the room for support. Victor nodded, appreciating the man's courage to address such an important issue. "Great question. Accountability starts with transparency," he explained. "We need to push for independent oversight boards that can investigate complaints against officers without bias. This is something we can advocate for together." The discussion continued, with community members sharing their ideas and concerns. Victor facilitated the conversation, encouraging collaboration and brainstorming solutions. As the forum progressed, he saw the transformation in the room. The fear and uncertainty of the initial moments had shifted to empowerment and determination. That evening, Victor left the forum feeling inspired. He understood that the collective voice of the community had the power to enact change. They were no longer passive observers. They were active participants in shaping their future. As Victor continued his advocacy, he also received invitations to speak at schools and universities. He seized the opportunity to educate younger generations about the importance of justice reform. His presentations emphasized the need for critical thinking and civic engagement, encouraging students to question the status quo and become advocates for change. During one of his school visits, he met a group of high school students who were passionate about social justice. They expressed their frustrations about the injustices they witnessed in their community and how they felt powerless to affect change. Victor saw the fire in their eyes and recognized their potential as future leaders. "I want to challenge you all to become advocates in your own right," he told them. "You have the power to speak out, organize, and demand change. It starts with understanding the issues and finding your voice." Inspired by Victor's words, the students organized a school-wide assembly focused on justice reform. They invited local activists and community leaders to speak, creating a platform for dialogue and awareness. Victor attended the assembly, witnessing the students take charge of their own advocacy efforts. Their enthusiasm filled the room, and he felt a sense of hope for the future. As their movement gained momentum, Victor began to attract the attention of media outlets and influential figures in the political sphere. Interviews and articles highlighting his efforts for justice reform circulated, bringing national awareness to the issues at hand. He received messages of support from individuals across the country who had been inspired by his work. One day, Victor received a call from a well-known documentary filmmaker who wanted to create a film about the justice reform movement. "Your story is powerful, Victor," the filmmaker said. "We want to showcase the stories of those affected by the system and highlight the work being done to bring about change." Victor felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He knew that sharing their stories on a larger platform could amplify their message, but also bring challenges. After discussing it with his team and the individuals whose stories would be featured, they agreed to move forward, understanding the importance of raising awareness. Filming began, and Victor found himself navigating the complexities of sharing deeply personal stories on camera. The documentary followed the journeys of several individuals who had faced injustices, including Maria, who bravely spoke about her brother's wrongful imprisonment. Each interview was an emotional experience, revealing the pain and resilience of those affected by the system. As the film progressed, Victor worked closely with the filmmaker to ensure that the focus remained on the need for reform. This isn't just about us. It's about creating a movement, he emphasized during filming. We want to inspire others to join us in advocating for change. The documentary premiered at a local film festival, drawing significant attention from the media and the community. Victor felt a mixture of pride and vulnerability as he watched the stories unfold on the screen. The audience was captivated by the powerful narratives, and many were moved to tears. Following the screening, a panel discussion was held featuring Victor, the filmmaker, and several of the individuals featured in the film. The conversation focused on the impact of the documentary and the importance of advocacy. Victor emphasized the need for ongoing engagement and action, urging the audience to get involved in the movement for justice reform. As the event concluded, Victor was approached by a young woman who had been deeply affected by the film. "I never knew how serious these issues were," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to help. What can I do?" Victor smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility mixed with hope. "Get involved," he encouraged her. "Join us in our upcoming initiatives, share your story, and use your voice to advocate for change. We need everyone to stand up and fight for justice." The documentary sparked a wave of activism, with viewers organizing community screenings and discussions about the issues raised in the film. Victor's movement continued to gain traction, and he felt a sense of urgency to capitalize on the momentum. As he planned the next steps, he collaborated with a coalition of activists to organize a national march for justice. The event would bring together individuals from diverse backgrounds, united by the common goal of reforming the justice system. Victor envisioned a powerful display of solidarity, with speakers sharing their stories and inspiring others to take action. As the day of the march approached, excitement filled the air. Victor worked tirelessly to coordinate logistics, reaching out to community leaders, securing permits, and promoting the event through social media and local news outlets. He knew that this was an opportunity to make a statement and galvanize support for the movement. On the day of the march, Victor arrived early, his heart racing as he took in the sight of thousands of people gathering at the rallying point. The energy was electric, and he could see a sea of signs and banners calling for justice reform. He felt a swell of pride as he looked around, realizing that they had created a movement that transcended individual stories. As the march kicked off, Victor led the crowd, chanting slogans and encouraging participants to raise their voices for change. The streets filled with passionate individuals, all marching for a common cause. He felt an overwhelming sense of unity, a realization that they were all part of something much larger than themselves. Throughout the day, speakers took to the stage to share their stories and advocate for reform. Victor spoke passionately about the need for accountability and transparency within the justice system, urging everyone to continue to fight beyond the march. "This is just the beginning," he declared. "We must carry this energy forward and demand change from our leaders." The march culminated in a powerful rally, with people from all walks of life coming together to demand justice. Victor stood at the front, surrounded by fellow advocates, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. They had come so far, and he knew that their collective efforts had the power to create real change. And as the rally concluded, Victor took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point. The fight for justice had been fraught with challenges, but it had also been filled with hope and resilience. With renewed determination, he committed to continuing the work, knowing that the road ahead would require persistence and unwavering dedication. Days turned into weeks, and the momentum from the march continued to ripple through communities across the nation. Victor and his team worked tirelessly to follow up on their goals, advocating for specific legislative changes and pushing for greater accountability in law enforcement practices. With each passing day, more individuals joined the movement, inspired by the stories they had heard and the sense of community they had built. Victor remained focused on their mission, recognizing that meaningful change required sustained effort and collaboration. As he prepared for the next round of advocacy efforts, Victor held regular meetings with his team to strategize and plan their next steps. They discussed the importance of maintaining public interest and ensuring that their message resonated with lawmakers. During one of these meetings, a team member proposed organizing a series of virtual town halls to engage with constituents directly. We can use technology to reach people who may not have been able to join us in person, they suggested. It's an opportunity to connect with a broader audience and keep the momentum going. Victor loved the idea. That's brilliant. Let's make sure to promote these events widely so we can reach as many people as possible. He responded enthusiastically. He knew that their movement needed to be inclusive and accessible, and virtual town halls could provide a platform for more voices to be heard. As the virtual town halls kicked off, Victor felt a surge of excitement as he connected with individuals from across the country. They shared their stories, discussed their experiences with the justice system, and provided valuable insights into the changes they wanted to see. Each session served as a reminder of the diverse backgrounds and perspectives that made their movement strong. In one particularly impactful town hall, a father spoke about the loss of his son, who had fallen victim to police violence. "I just want justice for my son," he said, his voice breaking. "No one should have to go through what we've been through. We need to change this system so that no other family experiences this pain." Victor listened intently, feeling the weight of the man's words. "Your son's story matters, and we will honor his memory by fighting for the changes that will prevent this from happening again," he promised. "We will continue to advocate for accountability and justice, and we will not stop until we see change." With every virtual town hall, Victor felt a growing sense of responsibility. He was no longer just a voice in the movement. He was a catalyst for change, connecting people and empowering them to advocate for themselves and their communities. As the year progressed, Victor's advocacy efforts expanded to include collaborations with other social justice organizations. He recognized the interconnectedness of various movements and understood that their goals aligned in many ways. Together, they began to strategize how to leverage their collective power to advocate for broader systemic reforms. During a joint meeting with representatives from different organizations, Victor proposed a multifaceted approach to their advocacy. "We need to focus not just on police reform, but also on issues like education, healthcare, and economic inequality," he explained. "These factors are all intertwined, and addressing them holistically will create a more just society for everyone." The group nodded in agreement, and they spent the following weeks developing a comprehensive advocacy plan that addressed the root causes of systemic injustice. They organized a series of events that combined education, community engagement, and activism to raise awareness about the interconnectedness of social issues. As their collaborative efforts gained traction, Victor's team worked diligently to draft policy proposals that reflected their shared vision for reform. They reached out to lawmakers, seeking to establish partnerships that would help advance their initiatives. Victor felt energized by the growing movement and the potential for real change. He knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was resolute in his belief that their collective efforts would create a better future for all. As they prepared for a major advocacy event, Victor reflected on the progress they had made. The fight for justice was far from over, but he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the community that had rallied around their cause. They had created a powerful coalition, and together, they were determined to continue pushing for change. The event was designed to be a rallying point for their collective efforts, drawing attention to the importance of justice reform and the need for systemic change. As Victor stood on stage, looking out at the crowd, he felt a rush of pride and hope. They had come so far, and he knew that their voices would resonate far beyond that day. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady. "We are gathered not just to share our stories, but to ignite a movement that cannot be ignored. Together, we will challenge the status quo and demand accountability from those in power. This is our moment, and we will not back down." The crowd erupted in applause, and Victor felt the energy surge through him. He knew that they were on the cusp of something monumental, and he was ready to lead the charge toward justice. As Victor's speech resonated through the crowd, the atmosphere was charged with enthusiasm and determination. The people present were not just listeners. They were a community bound by a shared mission to reform the justice system. As he stepped off the stage, He was immediately surrounded by supporters eager to discuss their next steps. Among them was Maria, who had become a significant figure in the movement. "Victor, your speech was incredible. We need to ensure that our stories are at the forefront of this campaign," she said, her eyes shining with passion. "I was thinking, what if we create a video series featuring individuals telling their stories? We could share them on social media to raise awareness and garner support." Victor smiled, recognizing the power of storytelling that had become the backbone of their advocacy. "That's a brilliant idea, Maria. We can launch a campaign called Voices for Justice. Let's gather as many stories as we can and share them widely. Each story is a powerful testament to the change we are fighting for." Excited about the plan, they quickly gathered a team to brainstorm how to execute it effectively. They discussed logistics, potential participants, and how to structure the videos to ensure maximum impact. Victor emphasized the importance of authenticity. These stories should reflect the real experiences of those affected by the system, he said. "We need to create a safe space for individuals to express themselves freely." With enthusiasm building, the team began reaching out to individuals willing to share their stories. The response was overwhelming. People were eager to participate, feeling empowered by the movement. Each story recorded was a step toward breaking the silence surrounding injustices and amplifying voices that had long been ignored. As the campaign progressed, Victor worked closely with a talented videographer who had volunteered to help. They spent days capturing powerful narratives, editing the footage, and preparing it for release. Each story was a reminder of the systemic issues they were combating, and the urgency of their work felt more palpable than ever. The campaign launched with great fanfare. Victor and Maria organized a virtual event to premiere the first few videos, inviting supporters and community members to join in. They utilized social media platforms to spread the word, encouraging attendees to share the videos widely. As the premiere night arrived, Victor felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He knew that this campaign had the potential to reach a wider audience and make a significant impact. As the first video played, the room fell silent, all eyes glued to the screen. The video featured a man named James, who shared his harrowing experience with wrongful conviction. He spoke candidly about the emotional toll it took on him and his family. "I lost years of my life to a system that failed me," he stated, his voice strong yet vulnerable. "But I refuse to let my story be silenced. We need to change this." When the video ended, the audience erupted in applause. Victor felt a rush of pride as he looked around the room. They were witnessing the power of storytelling in action. "Thank you for sharing your story, James," Victor said, addressing him from the front. "This is just the beginning. We will continue to elevate voices like yours until we see the change we need." The evening continued with more video presentations, each one powerful and moving in its own right. As stories unfolded, the impact was undeniable. People began to engage with one another, discussing the narratives and expressing their support for the campaign. As the event wrapped up, Victor took a moment to reflect on the night's success. The Voices for Justice campaign was more than just a collection of stories. It was a movement designed to challenge the status quo and demand accountability. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with attendees expressing a desire to get involved and help spread the word. In the following weeks, the campaign gained traction. The videos circulated on social media, and support poured in from unexpected corners. Victor received messages from individuals across the country who had been touched by the stories, many sharing their own experiences and expressing a desire to join the fight for justice. Recognizing the growing interest, Victor and his team decided to host a follow-up event, a National Day of Action. They invited participants to organize local gatherings where people could come together to discuss the issues and share their stories in person. The goal was to create a unified front, demonstrating that the fight for justice was not confined to one city or state, but a nationwide movement. As the National Day of Action approached, Victor worked tirelessly to coordinate with local organizers. He provided resources, promotional materials, and guidance on how to structure the gatherings. His focus was on ensuring that every event highlighted the importance of community involvement and collective action. On the day of the event, cities across the nation erupted with rallies, marches, and discussions. Victor felt an overwhelming sense of pride as he saw the movement he had nurtured take shape on such a grand scale. He participated in a local gathering, speaking to a crowd about the significance of their work. "Today is a testament to our collective strength," he declared. "Every voice matters, and together, we will create change. We are here to demand accountability, to seek justice for those who have been wronged, and to stand in solidarity with one another." The energy was palpable as people shared their stories, discussed strategies for advocacy, and committed to continue the fight. Victor moved from group to group, listening to individual experiences and providing encouragement. He felt the power of the community coming together, united by a common cause. As the day concluded, Victor received an email that would change the trajectory of their movement. A prominent lawmaker had reached out, expressing interest in discussing potential reforms and collaboration on legislation addressing the issues raised in the Voices for Justice campaign. Over the next few weeks, Victor prepared for the meeting with the lawmaker. He gathered data, testimonies, and resources to present a compelling case for reform. He understood the importance of framing their experiences within the larger context of systemic change. When the day of the meeting arrived, Victor felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had spent years advocating for justice, and this felt like a pivotal moment. As he walked into the meeting room, he was greeted by the lawmaker and their staff. They were eager to hear his perspective. "Thank you for meeting with me," Victor began, taking a seat at the table. "I appreciate your willingness to engage in this dialogue. I stand here not just for myself, but for countless individuals whose lives have been impacted by a flawed system." As he presented the evidence and stories he had gathered, the lawmaker listened intently. Victor emphasized the need for reforms that would ensure accountability, transparency, and equitable treatment within the justice system. He highlighted the urgency of addressing issues like wrongful convictions and police violence, stressing that systemic change was essential for building trust within communities. The discussion flowed naturally, with the lawmaker asking questions and engaging in a thoughtful dialogue about potential legislative solutions. Victor felt encouraged by the openness of the conversation, recognizing that they were making progress. "I believe we have an opportunity to draft legislation that reflects the voices of those affected," Victor proposed. "We need to ensure that community members have a seat at the table during the policy-making process." The lawmaker nodded in agreement. "I hear you, Victor. It's essential that we listen to the community and incorporate their perspectives into any reforms we propose." As the meeting concluded, Victor left feeling hopeful. He had made significant strides in advocating for justice reform, and he was determined to continue building momentum. He knew that the journey ahead would require collaboration, persistence, and unwavering dedication. In the following months, Victor and the lawmaker worked closely to draft a comprehensive reform proposal that addressed the systemic issues raised during their discussions. They hosted community forums to gather input and feedback, ensuring that the voices of those most affected by the justice system were central to the process. The proposed legislation gained traction, attracting attention from other lawmakers, activists, and community organizations. As support grew, Victor organized a rally at the state capitol to demonstrate public backing for the reforms. He reached out to supporters, encouraging them to come together and make their voices heard. On the day of the rally, Victor stood before a large crowd, energized by their presence. "Today, we send a clear message to our lawmakers. We demand justice," he declared, rallying the crowd. "Together, we will fight for accountability, transparency, and a system that truly serves the people." As cheers erupted around him, Victor felt the weight of their collective strength. The energy in the air was electric, and he knew they were making an impact. The rally drew media attention, further amplifying their message and bringing visibility to the proposed reforms. In the weeks that followed, the momentum continued to build. Victor received invitations to speak at conferences and forums, sharing his experiences and advocating for systemic change. His story and the stories of countless others resonated with individuals across the country, inspiring them to take action in their communities. With each passing day, Victor's commitment to justice grew stronger. He understood that the fight for reform was ongoing, and he was determined to stay at the forefront of the movement. As he prepared for the next phase of advocacy, he knew that every voice mattered and that their collective efforts had the power to create lasting change. Victor's journey had come full circle, from being a victim of the justice system to becoming a voice for reform. He felt a deep sense of responsibility to honor the stories that had inspired him and to continue fighting for those who had yet to be heard. As he looked toward the future, he knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he remained unwavering in his belief that together, they could transform the justice system into one that truly served and protected all individuals. As Victor continued his advocacy work, he began to notice a shift in public discourse around justice reform. News outlets that once overlooked the issue were now running stories highlighting the stories shared through the Voices for Justice campaign. More and more community members began to engage in discussions about systemic injustice, and grassroots organizations flourished across the country. Inspired by the growing interest in justice reform, Victor decided to host a series of workshops aimed at educating community members about their rights and the intricacies of the justice system. He partnered with legal experts, activists, and educators to create a curriculum that would empower individuals to advocate for themselves and their communities. The workshops included sessions on how to navigate the legal system, understand civil rights, and effectively engage with local government. As the workshops kicked off, Victor felt invigorated. The first session drew a diverse crowd eager to learn and engage. Attendees included families, young adults, and even retired law enforcement officers who wanted to better understand the system from a different perspective. "Welcome, everyone," Victor greeted them with a smile. "Today, we're not just here to learn. We're here to empower each other. Knowledge is a powerful tool, and together, we can create change within our communities." He introduced the first speaker, a civil rights attorney who shared insights on the legal system and the importance of knowing one's rights during interactions with law enforcement. The attorney's presentation sparked questions and discussions, creating an interactive environment that encouraged participants to voice their thoughts and concerns. After the workshop, Victor received numerous messages from attendees expressing gratitude for the opportunity to learn. "I never knew I had the right to ask for a lawyer at any time during a police encounter," one participant wrote. "I feel more confident now. Thank you." Encouraged by the positive feedback, Victor planned more sessions and expanded the workshops to include discussions on the impact of socioeconomic factors on justice outcomes. He knew that understanding these complexities was crucial for driving systemic change. One evening, as Victor prepared for a particularly significant workshop, he received a call from an old friend, Marcus, who had been involved in law enforcement for years. "Hey, Victor, I've been following your work, and I have to say, it's impressive," Marcus said. "I want to support what you're doing. How can I help?" Victor was taken aback, but excited. "Marcus, I appreciate that. Your perspective as someone within the system could bring a lot of value to our discussions. Would you be willing to join us for a workshop? I think it could be enlightening for both our community and law enforcement." Marcus agreed, and they set a date for him to speak. On the day of the workshop, Victor introduced Marcus to the audience, highlighting his experience and commitment to improving community relations. As Marcus began to speak, he shared stories from his time in the field, emphasizing the challenges officers face and the importance of community trust. "I know there's a lot of tension between law enforcement and communities right now," Marcus said, looking around the room. "But it's vital for us to engage in conversations like these. We need to break down barriers and work together toward solutions." The audience listened intently, and Victor could see the impact of Marcus's words. Participants began to ask questions, and the dialogue that ensued was both candid and constructive. For Victor, witnessing this exchange was a hopeful sign that change was possible from within the system. As the workshops continued, Victor recognized the need for a broader platform to connect various stakeholders: community members, law enforcement, and policymakers. He envisioned a summit that would bring everyone together to discuss pressing issues, share solutions, and foster collaboration. With determination, he began organizing the summit, reaching out to local leaders, organizations, and experts to participate. The planning process was rigorous, but Victor was motivated by the potential outcomes. He sought to create an environment where open dialogue could thrive and innovative ideas could emerge. Finally, the day of the summit arrived. The venue was filled with individuals from diverse backgrounds, all united by a common goal: to work toward a more just society. Victor welcomed everyone, emphasizing the importance of their presence and participation. Today, we have an opportunity to build bridges and create a shared vision for justice reform, he declared. The agenda included panels on various topics, including police accountability, community safety, and the intersection of social justice and economic opportunity. Participants engaged in breakout sessions, discussing challenges and brainstorming potential solutions. Victor moved from group to group, facilitating discussions and gathering insights. In one session focused on community safety, an attendee voiced concerns about neighborhood policing and the need for community involvement in shaping policing strategies. We want to feel safe in our neighborhoods, but we also want to be involved in how policing happens, they explained. Victor nodded, recognizing the validity of their point. That's essential. Community policing should be a collaborative effort, where residents have a say in the policies and practices that affect their lives. As the summit progressed, Victor was encouraged by the willingness of participants to engage in difficult conversations. It was clear that the desire for change was palpable, and many attendees were ready to take action in their communities. At the end of the day, Victor gathered everyone for a closing session. He thanked the participants for their contributions and encouraged them to continue the dialogue beyond the summit. Change doesn't happen overnight, he reminded them, but by working together and holding each other accountable, we can make a lasting impact. With renewed determination, attendees left the summit inspired to implement what they had learned in their communities. Victor felt a surge of hope as he reflected on the progress they had made together. In the weeks following the summit, Victor continued to follow up with participants, checking in on their initiatives and providing support where needed. He recognized that sustaining momentum was critical for the movement's success. One evening, he received an unexpected call from a prominent national news outlet. They wanted to interview him about the impact of the Voices for Justice campaign and the recent summit. Excited but nervous, Victor agreed, knowing this was an opportunity to elevate the movement on a larger platform. During the interview, Victor spoke passionately about the stories that fueled their advocacy and the importance of community engagement in shaping justice reform. This movement is not just about changing laws. It's about transforming lives, he stated. We're building a movement rooted in empathy, understanding, and the pursuit of justice for all. The interview aired the following week, garnering attention and sparking conversations across the nation. Victor was flooded with messages from people inspired by the movement, and he was approached by other organizations interested in collaborating on similar initiatives. Fueled by the newfound energy, Victor organized a series of regional events to keep the momentum going. He traveled to different cities, sharing insights from their campaign, listening to local concerns, and offering support for grassroots efforts. Each visit deepened his commitment to the cause, and he forged connections with individuals who were equally passionate about advocating for justice. As he reflected on the impact of their work, Victor realized that their movement was evolving. It was no longer just about his personal journey or the stories of those directly affected by the justice system. It had become a collective effort that united individuals from diverse backgrounds, all dedicated to creating meaningful change. With the foundation they had built, Victor began to dream even bigger. He envisioned a national conference that would bring together activists, policymakers, law enforcement, and community members from across the country to collaborate on solutions to systemic injustice. This conference would serve as a platform for sharing knowledge, strategies, and best practices, fostering a sense of unity in their efforts. Victor and his team set to work on planning the conference, reaching out to potential speakers and securing a venue. They crafted an agenda that included workshops, panel discussions, and opportunities for networking. Each aspect was designed to ensure that the voices of those affected by injustice were at the forefront. As the date approached, excitement and anticipation grew. Victor utilized every platform available to promote the conference, encouraging individuals to register and participate. He felt a sense of urgency, knowing that this gathering had the potential to catalyze further change. On the day of the conference, the venue was buzzing with energy. Participants arrived from all over the country, eager to engage in discussions and share their experiences. Victor felt a mix of pride and gratitude as he looked out over the crowd. This was the culmination of their efforts, a diverse coalition committed to justice reform. The conference opened with a keynote address from a renowned activist who had spent decades fighting for civil rights. Their words resonated deeply, inspiring attendees to think critically about the work ahead. Victor followed with his own remarks, emphasizing the importance of collaboration and community engagement. Today is not just a conference, it's a movement, he declared, rallying the crowd. Together, we have the power to change the narrative and shape the future of our justice system. As the day unfolded, attendees participated in workshops and discussions, exploring various topics related to justice reform. The atmosphere was charged with passion and commitment, and Victor moved through the crowd, facilitating conversations and listening to the insights shared by participants. By the end of the conference, Victor felt a renewed sense of purpose. The energy and ideas exchanged during the event would fuel their movement for months to come. As attendees departed, many expressed their desire to stay connected and continue the dialogue, signaling the beginning of new collaborations and initiatives. In the weeks that followed, Victor and his team worked tirelessly to compile the insights and ideas generated during the conference. They created a comprehensive report that summarized key themes, proposed solutions, and actionable steps for advocacy. This document would serve as a roadmap for their continued efforts. Victor also recognized the importance of maintaining the momentum they had built. He launched a monthly newsletter to keep supporters informed about developments in justice reform, upcoming events, and opportunities for engagement. Through this platform, he encouraged individuals to share their stories and experiences, ensuring that the movement remained rooted in personal narratives. As the movement gained visibility, Victor received invitations to speak at various national conferences and events. He seized each opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of justice reform and the ongoing struggles faced by marginalized communities. With each presentation, he continued to amplify the stories that had inspired him and fueled their advocacy. Through these efforts, Victor forged connections with policymakers and influencers who began to take notice of the movement. He was invited to participate in discussions with lawmakers, considering reforms that aligned with their advocacy goals. It was a pivotal moment for Victor, as he realized the potential to influence legislation directly. In one of these meetings, Victor presented the findings from the conference report, highlighting the collective voice of the community and the urgency of their proposed reforms. The room was filled with lawmakers, legal experts, and community leaders, all engaged in a serious discussion about the future of justice in their state. We have a unique opportunity to reshape our justice system in a way that prioritizes accountability and community trust, Victor asserted passionately. We can't afford to wait any longer. The time for change is now. The conversation that followed was robust, with varying perspectives brought to the table. Victor appreciated the diversity of opinions and the willingness of lawmakers to engage in meaningful dialogue. He recognized that collaboration was essential for creating lasting change. As the meeting concluded, Victor felt optimistic. Their efforts were resonating, and the possibility of enacting reform was becoming more tangible. He left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose, energized by the progress they were making. In the months that followed, Victor continued to advocate for justice reform, building relationships with lawmakers and community organizations. He recognized that this work would require persistence and patience, but he was committed to seeing it through. Meanwhile, the movement continued to grow. Local chapters of Voices for Justice sprang up in cities across the country, each organizing their own events, workshops, and advocacy efforts. Victor was inspired by the grassroots momentum and the dedication of individuals who were taking action in their communities. As the year drew to a close, Victor gathered his team to reflect on their accomplishments. They had launched a successful campaign, organized workshops, hosted a national conference, and engaged with lawmakers, all while amplifying the voices of those affected by the justice system. "We've come so far," Victor acknowledged during their meeting. "But we can't stop here. There's still so much work to be done, and we need to continue pushing for meaningful change." With that determination, they began brainstorming their goals for the upcoming year. They discussed strategies for sustaining the movement, increasing public awareness, and further engaging with policymakers. Each member of the team contributed ideas, driven by their passion for justice and reform. As they finalized their plans, Victor felt a sense of excitement. The journey ahead was filled with challenges, but he knew they were equipped with the knowledge, support, and determination to continue their fight for justice. Meanwhile, the network of local chapters continued to flourish, with each group sharing successes, challenges, and best practices. Victor was heartened to see how individuals were empowered to take action within their own communities, organizing rallies, creating awareness campaigns, and advocating for policy changes tailored to their specific needs. As spring approached, Victor organized a follow-up summit, inviting not only participants from the first conference, but also new allies who had joined the movement. He wanted to create a space for sharing updates and celebrating achievements, while also strategizing the next steps in their collective journey. The day of the summit was filled with energy and anticipation. Victor welcomed attendees with a message of hope. "We are not just a movement. We are a community. Together, we are reshaping the future of justice. Every story shared, every voice raised, and every action taken is a step toward a more just society." Throughout the day, speakers and panelists shared updates on legislative progress and grassroots initiatives, sparking discussions that were both reflective and forward-thinking. Attendees exchanged ideas, forged new partnerships, and re-energized their commitment to the cause. By the time the summit came to a close, Victor felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The movement had grown beyond anything he had imagined, and he was humbled to witness the resilience and passion of those around him. It was clear that the collective efforts were beginning to yield tangible results. Communities were engaging with their local governments, and lawmakers were increasingly aware of the need for reform. As Victor stood before the crowd one last time, he said, "This is just the beginning. The journey may be long and the challenges may be daunting, but we have the power to affect change. Each of you is a vital part of this movement, and together, we will continue to advocate for justice and ensure that every voice is heard." In the weeks following the summit, Victor received messages from participants expressing their excitement and determination to continue the work. News outlets began covering stories of local initiatives that were taking root, highlighting the efforts of community members who were stepping up to demand accountability and reform. Victor knew that while there was still much work to be done, the progress they had made was undeniable. He reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from a painful moment of being wrongfully accused to a position of influence and advocacy. The fight for justice was far from over, but he felt an unwavering resolve within himself and his community. As he looked toward the future, Victor envisioned a day when systemic injustice would be dismantled, replaced by a justice system that truly served and protected all individuals, regardless of their background. He remained committed to that vision, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together with his team and the growing movement, Victor was prepared to continue the fight for justice, equality, and understanding, knowing that every step taken was a step toward a brighter, more equitable future. And as the sun set on that hopeful day, Victor felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace the journey ahead with courage and determination.